Charlie Rangel is not going down without a fight, and he is certainly not going away quietly. And we thought the state Senate was a hot mess. Well, here to talk about all of this and what it could mean for Rangel and his colleagues going forward, as well as the other hot-button issues of the week, are our resident political insiders. Joining us tonight is Bruce Jory. He served as a senior advisor to two former Democratic governors, and he is now with Corning Place Consulting and an adjunct professor of political science at UAlbany. Across the table, we have Bob Bellafiore. He is a former press secretary to ex-Governor George Pataki and is now a senior partner at Eric Mower and Associates. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
You need a smaller title. That's what you need. Okay. Anyway, let's start with Rangel.
Yes.
Who wants to start? I know both of you have seen this amazing speech that we saw on the floor, by turns kind of rambling and sort of endearing and maybe, dare I say, a little pathetic, but also completely defiant. What say you?
You know, I couldn't catch the whole thing, but so I probably caught about 15 minutes of it. But to me, you know, it was mostly sad. It sounded like one of the final roars of a great old lion before he fades away. And I found that, you know, kind of disappointing. I mean, to me, it seems like people should always be right. I firmly believe in sports and The Godfather as a great metaphors for life, and everybody should learn the lesson of Willie Mays. Willie Mays is arguably one of the 2 or 3 greatest baseball players who ever lived, but he's gone down in history for staying too long. He stayed 2 or 3 years past when he should have, and you know there were iconic photographs of him falling down in center field trying to make a routine catch. And Charlie Rangel today reminded me of Willie Mays staying too long.
Do you think he should resign?
Look, you know, only he knows what the facts are. So it's hard. I think it's hard for Bruce or me or anybody else to say he should resign. He knows what the facts are. He may be denying them, but he knows what the facts are. I think there are a lot of Democrats who feel like he should resign because he is an argument for why Democrats can't be trusted. If you're Republican, why Democrats can't be trusted to run the government all by themselves.
Bruce?
This is a tough one. You would have thought that they would have recommended censure, which would have been far harsher than a reprimand.
Well, apparently they did.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, we're hearing different things. We don't know.
True.
And if they had a censure, he may have been able to hang on. We don't know. The question people are asking, should he resign? I don't know if he should resign. Whether Democrats will call on him to resign will really be a function of the public reaction in August. I mean, the House is on the line, and you're not going to see a lot of profiles in courage. You're going to see people grappling for their own political viability. He functionally said that on the floor today. I don't disagree with Bob. There was a sad quality to it. There was a poignant quality to it, and I think politics is going to drive the reaction to this, which is too bad. You would have hoped it would have been more of a finding of facts, and if he deserved a censure, give him a censure, but not leave him hanging in the wind.
Okay,
but I don't disagree. It's an awful situation.
Let's just very quickly before we move on. Mike Arcuri, upstate congressman, who is in hot water, really.
Yeah.
It's a difficult race. He's running
race
against Richard Hanna, the second time that Hanna's trying to beat him, self-funding. Hanna has 3 lines, Arcuri has 1, and maybe another independent that he's calling moderate, New York moderates or something along those lines. So he has called for Rangel to resign. It just seems, was that an appropriate thing, and will it work? Because if you call on a guy to resign, and then he doesn't or he does, you don't inculcate yourself, you don't inoculate yourself, rather, against the whole problem.
Right. That's correct. What the Democrats need is a solution to this. They don't have that yet. Politically, what's going to happen is they break for the August recess. We're going to see if the Republicans can whip public opinion up so that more members, not so much in New York, Arcuri called for it, but in southern states and western states, in border states will call for his resignation, and that leads to a certain momentum. And I think really now it's the vicissitudes of public opinion that will drive Rangel's outcome.
Well, let's move over to the Republicans.
I don't think it's up to Republicans to whip it up. I think all Charlie Rangel has to do is stay out there in the public eye, and that will whip things up. A guy like Mark Arcuri, is going to be, has to respond to the issue, is he with Rangel, or does he think he should stay, or does he think he should go? If he says he thinks he should stay, then he has to take the Rangel defense on all the issues.
But he said he thinks he should go.
Right, but that's why he has to, because to defend Rangel is indefensible. Charlie Rangel stood on the floor of the House today and said he accidentally pulled out the wrong letterhead to raise money for the CUNY Center. Now, this is a guy who was responsible for the committee that writes tax policy in the country. You can't say, oops, I got the wrong letterhead. It's like the sort of Steve Martin defense. I forgot. You know, you can't do that and be in a position of that responsibility. So Democrats will have to answer to him, answer for him across the country.
Okay, let's move on to some Republican bashing, shall we? Just to make it fair. Like, I just want to talk briefly about your party. Today we saw John Faso come out and say that he thinks that the party should unite around Rick Lazio. We then saw Carl Palladino come out with 28,000 signatures to form an independent line. And tomorrow we're going to see some Genesee County GOP leaders endorse Carl Palladino. It doesn't look good for Rick Lazio right now.
I agree. I don't think Rick Lazio is going to be the Republican Party nominee. It's very hard for the, and I have a lot of respect for John Faso. He's a good friend of mine, and I think he has been a great public servant. But the fact of the matter is the leaders of the party can't tell the people of the party who to support. And the leaders of the party have gotten behind Rick Lazio, and the people of the party don't support him. He hasn't raised money, he hasn't gotten traction, he hasn't grabbed anything with the press, and he hasn't been able to make any inroads against Carl Palladino, and certainly not Andrew Cuomo. And I think that's Rick Lazio's fault. And
who's ahead in the polls now?
It doesn't really matter what the polls are.
In the Republicans? It's Lazio, but Palladino has the momentum.
I don't think so. I think the question comes down, when does the media focus on who Carl Palladino is, his personality, his temperament, in that whole constellation of issues in light of the emails that were both sexist, racist, and anti-Semitic. If the media focuses on that, you're not going to need to match $10 million. You're just going to have to be standing. On the other hand, the media could lay back and say, let's wait to see if he wins the primary, and then we'll investigate. If I were a Republican, I'd be very disappointed at the inability to drive and sustain issues in a year where the electorate is open to Republican critiques of public policy. The party isn't giving it to them.
Well, and the fact of the matter is Democrats would love to have Lazio on the ballot because he hasn't shown any ability to raise money, and everybody knows you can't, you know, it is the oxygen of politics.
Well, we actually saw Republicans come out and start hitting in the state Senate races, and there's an ad out today. I'd like you guys to take a look at it.
Mm-hmm. In the last 2 years, state spending has increased by $14 billion, and state taxes have increased by $14 billion. The Republican senators voted no on both. David Valesky and Daryl Albertine followed their Democrat colleagues from New York City, who now control the state Senate, and voted yes for the billions of dollars in tax and spending increases. While Central and Northern New Yorkers are hurting, your tax dollars went down the drain. David Valesky and Daryl Albertine can't solve the problem. They are the problem.
Okay, a classic upstate-downstate divide thing that's going on there. The Republicans have been trying to use that for some time. It's been in their talking points. Will it work?
No. I think what this is a classic feint ad. This is exactly out of the Republican playbook from 2008. They started running against Liz Oppenheimer, Susie Oppenheimer, sorry, with Liz Feld, and against Craig Johnson, spent a lot of money to hope that the Democrats would defend those seats, and then they went after their real targets. This is way too early an ad buy.
Interesting, a head
This is way too early an ad buy. They are trying to get the Democrats to think these two seats are in jeopardy so that they do not go after where Republicans are vulnerable. Or they may, or if they put their money here. But I suspect it's the Liz Feld, whoever ran against Craig Johnson strategy all over. And I think the guy who may be reaching for the Pepto-Bismol is Frank Padovan, because if the Democrats take this ad down to New York City and say, look at how Frank Padovan, his friends in Albany are trying to run against New York City, they could lose a seat that is very precarious for them.
Last word, you.
Here's what I suspect from this ad. Elections are not about reality. They're about what politicians can get voters to think is the reality at the moment they have to make a decision in the ballot box. This is a classic education ad. They know voters are upset. Voters don't really have the facts. This ad's an attempt to give them the facts.
Okay, and so will it work?
It's August, Liz. It takes a while.
It is indeed August. Yes,
Will
I
Dave
have noticed.
the problem is the Republicans don't even know if they're going to have a united Republican conservative candidate because there's a primary in that
That's
district.
true.
So if they were going to really invest big money in this, and Valesky were a target, don't you think you'd wait to see if it was a three-way race or a two-way race?
And last word, Bruce. Okay.